Hello, hello, everyone, and welcome back to our Wednesday webinar, Airdomo Global. I'm Stephanie, co-founder of Airdomo, and if you haven't been tuning in, or if you have been tuning in, you have noticed over the past 2 weeks, we have looked at blue zones where people live long, right? Because Charles and I are both trying to study how we can live longer and have wellness real estate, and how those same principles are being engineered directly into development and communities. It's the hot commodity that's going on in the world right now. And both conversations, it kept bringing us back to that same question, which that's why we decided to make this entire episode about this exact topic. And that is, how do you know when a lifestyle premium is real, right? Because the truth is, in a market where buyers are paying 10 to 25% more for wellness, lifestyle, and community, the language has gotten very, very good at sounding like a substance. So today we're going to separate them. We're going to deep dive. We're going to look at and we're going to recognize how genuine lifestyle value is in a property and what warning signs we can make you aware of, right? Because the way they market these properties might make you think you should pay a premium, but should you really? So Charles is back with me, you guys. He was introduced last week, if you weren't tuning in, but you always have heard me say co-founder. So for those of you that didn't tune in last week, we've introduced the other co-founder of Airdomo. Charles is here. Welcome back.
That's right. You didn't scare me away. I'm back for some more. And no, I think this is a great topic, and it's a great continuation of the conversations we've been having about the blue zones and the wellness trends in real estate, because the lifestyle factor is plugs into that inherently. And, it's not really that a lifestyle premium on a property is a bad thing, right? If it's what you're looking for, and if it does in fact feed that lifestyle, gives you the right outcome, it's well worth it. It's worth more than what you pay for it. But the problem is, how can you be sure, right? How can you be sure that what you're paying for is really what you want? And I think what we want to talk about today is some skills and some thought process that can help you make that evaluation, especially when you're looking across borders, when you're looking into another country where it's all about the lifestyle. Really, that's what you're getting for the most part, right? You want to find that right lifestyle, and you want to find the things that are right for you. So there are things that may or may not plug into your lifestyle, things like a pool or a fitness center or kind of our conventional amenities. But then there's things like the culture and the community and things like that are much more kind of intrinsic to the lifestyle. And so we're going to talk about how you can kind of parse those and put a value on them to help you in that decision-making process. So, let's start, Stephanie, what's your opinion about what makes a lifestyle premium a legitimate part of your purchase?
Yeah, a genuine lifestyle premium has to show up in one of two places. And look, ideally both places. Either it changes how you actually live inside the property day to day, or it changes the profile of who wants it and keeps it full. So let's, for example, a development in coastal Portugal, where the climate, the food markets, walking past to the beach, it's got that slower pace of life where we should be hanging out, Charles, because we're so fast all the time, right? That is delivering a different lifestyle, right? But it's also where it's genuinely accessible, and it's genuinely different from a city apartment, okay? That's real. That is real, proven concept of living, okay? The lifestyle is delivered by location, it's delivered by the layout, and it's delivered by the community that surrounds it, okay? So it exists whether or not anyone markets it that way. So compare that then to the urban tower, where the developer has branded the lobby with wellness language, okay? We've seen this, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
He's added a salt room and a cold plunge on the amenity floor and charged a 30% markup because of the salt room and the cold plunge, and that's wellness. So does that make sense? Look, the cold plunge and the salt room, those aren't bad things, but is it really worth a 30% markup? That's the question you've got to ask yourself.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it comes down to your personal usage of it, right? I mean, for say something like, whether it feels like it's embedded versus bolted on, right? Embedded being just intrinsic and naturally part of the community, and of course, a lot of that is, like you said, that's the location, that's the That's the culture. That's the cuisine. That's stuff that was there long before anybody laid down the first brick, laid down any foundation. That stuff is just part of what you're buying into. And that's a huge part of it. But then you look at things that are what you might call bolted on, right? That's the stuff that's added, like the plunge pools, like the the spa, like those things that are, they're an amenity checklist, and the developer obviously wants you to see value and wants to justify a price premium in that purchase. And I think a lot of it comes down to where do you plug into that, right? So I mean, a golf course for some people is just another amenity. It might be a wheat field. You might never use
exactly.
Yeah. Morning at 7, hitting the links. That's your lifestyle, right? So it really comes down to parsing how you're going to interact with it, or your future tenants, or whatever your usage is. It's like that's the kind of the math you have to start doing. And so, how do you spot those value or maybe lack of value pieces, things that might just be a trend that won't be popular in 5 years, versus the ones that you think are they're gonna hold for you and for the value of your property? How do you go about looking into that?
Well, okay. So first off, you've got the marketing leads with amenities and not location, right? So if they're talking about the amenities versus where the property is located, that's a red flag. It's not necessarily telling you that it's not a wellness property, but it's a red flag to look deeper. Okay, so let it lead with location. If it's the first thing you hear is infinity pool, private cinema, meditation garden, before you've ever heard about the neighborhood, the walkability, the air quality, the local community, then that's going to probably be a good signal, right? Because real lifestyle properties tend to lead with where they are, because that's the story, right? Every good property has a story. Second, the premium is in the unit price, but the ongoing costs are buried. So service charges, amenity fees, the management fees on lifestyle developments, look, they can be 2 to 3 times standard building fees, okay? That eats into your yield. So that changes your resale conversion. It changes your conversation with the next buyer. It changes if you're buying this for an income producing property. So that is something that you have to pay attention to. And remember, things typically get more expensive. They don't get cheaper, right? And then third, the lifestyle is staged for sales season. Okay. So there's developments where the coffee shop in the lobby, there's yoga classes, the resident events, all of it runs beautifully during sales phases, right? But then all of a sudden, it's not season, right? There's not a lot of tourists coming in. And so they quietly scale back all of those. We actually had an opportunity to represent a development in one of my favorite places, Tulum, Mexico. And it was a wellness community. And they had yoga rooms. They had meditation centers. And I said, I'd love to see the agenda and the schedule. And they go, oh, well, we haven't staffed those yet. Well, come on now.
Yeah.
That's a pipe dream then, you guys. You're charging more because it's going to be a wellness community. It's going to be a wellness community. Look, we pay today, right, for what the property is today. And that's huge, okay? So in fourth, look, this is a subset one, okay? The community is described, but it's never demonstrated. And that's what I'm talking about. A vibrant international community is a phrase in a brochure. We see this all the time, okay? But the actual community shows up in resident WhatsApp groups, in spontaneous events, in residents who've been there for 3 years or more. One is a claim and the other is evidence. And so again, this is why Airdomo exists, because so much of selling global real estate throughout the years, people were coming to me going, oh my God, we're getting screwed royally. And these were the issues, right? And so, let us be those people that vet it. But Charles, let me throw it back to you, because I mean, these things there's just so much of it that we see on a day to day.
Well, you're spot on, because we all know buyers. We all know people that have jumped into these things that, thinking they were going to use this or get this, and, getting sort of the shock and regret of saying, well, either didn't have as much value for me as I had hoped, cost way more than I expected because as you said, the maintenance never gets less, right, for any of this stuff, or it just never materialized. Like you said, it's the the lobby where there's supposed to be an event or supposed to be some amenity. It's just crickets. It never turns up. So you got to be really, really careful on that front. I mean, we see fees, $500, $1,000, $2,000 in fees eating up the rental yield, just paying for things that may or may not work or have value to you. So it's really about modeling the total cost of ownership, figuring out what's truly of value to you and what's inherently a part of that property as opposed to what's been, like we said, bolted on. So, getting really practical about it. If you're sitting down to do the math, to evaluate a property based on these factors, what can you do to make sure you get the best possible result?
Here's my favorite thing. Go on an off day and visit. So don't go on the weekend when everybody's visiting and they're all staffed up and they're going to put on their best show, right? Go on the Tuesday or the Wednesday of the week, okay? And then make sure that you talk to existing residents. If there's people living there, you need to speak to them, not just the sales office. I mean, you're going to uncover quite a bit of information. Even we do that. That's what we do as brokers and representatives and in our concierge service at Airdomo, is making sure that we're talking to the residents as well too, as part of our vetting process. But we want to ask them, how is it ran? How many events are happening? How is the place being managed and cared for? What did they wish they knew prior to purchasing? Right? And then ask them, if they had it to do all over again, would they buy? Is that the place they would still purchase? That right there is a very, very telling question. And they're going to tell you the truth. And that's part of the biggest thing that everybody needs to do is obviously do some vetting, right? But 3, read the service charge budget. This is a huge one, okay? Because you've got to see what is funded. And this is the part of it that it's probably 90% of all problems of failed developments in and around all countries, especially some of the islands. It's the sinking fund runs short. The developer never wants to take any of his or her profit and dump it into a bank account and say, sayonara, here you go. I'm going to maintain your next 5 years for you. They don't want to. So they're going to leave with a few cents in that account and then hope that the $500 a month are going to feed into it and be enough to maintain it. But there are ways to make sure all of that happens. And that goes back to vetting and making sure you're signing up with a great developer, which, Charles, we've had so many webinars on that. And so, again, this is why we founded Airdomo. We don't want to scare you from buying. We want you to buy. We just want you to utilize us for our knowledge to do so. But again, all of these things, happen by just doing some investigation and so forth. And, once you visit a place and see, that a plunge pool doesn't necessarily amount to a complete lifestyle change, I think that answers the question too.
Yeah, and I think those are all great ways to protect yourself going in. And the biggest one really is to set aside anything that's sort of built into the development, the amenity stack and all that, and focus on the surroundings, the environment. What value is that bringing to you? What's that intrinsic, inherent value of the community, the surroundings, the climate? That piece is bigger than you think, I think, when it comes down to it. And there's really no price for it. You can't put a price on it. It's the most important piece. And of course, the amenities are great, especially if you personally derive value from them. That's a big question. So they can factor in, absolutely. So don't be afraid to factor those in, but definitely take everything piece by piece, I think, and look at it really, honestly, and not as just a laundry list of amenities, because they may not pan out. They may not have value for you. There's a lot of ways that can go sideways. So don't be afraid to dive in. There's a lot of really amazing developers and developments out there. And as you said, Stephanie, we're here to help you with that every step of the way. So I think that's, but those are great rules for starting the process and protecting yourself when you jump in. So now that we've kind of covered all that, where do you see the value happening most right now? Where do you see that embedded intrinsic value happening around the world?
Look, there's several places, but there's one I want to hone in on especially. And Charles, we talked about this a little bit earlier today, and the the visibility of what's happening right now in Costa Rica. And if you visit airdomo.com, you're going to see a large inventory for Costa Rica right now, but they are the most popular place as far as wellness communities. And that's because they've just been recognized in the Santa Ana and Escazú region as the best climate in the world, right? So what better wellness can you have than to have the best climate in the world? I love Costa Rica. I've been there, some amazing things to do. And so there's a lot of new development going on there right now, and it is all around this wellness, and it has more to do than just spas, you all. It's everything to do with those, if you're a golfer, there's golf courses, but if you're a hiker, there's hiking. If you're a swimmer, if you're any of those things, that's what they're focused on. Is truly, if you're a family of 20 and all 20 of you want something different to do, that's what they're focused on, is bringing everything in together. And so their big draw too right now is they've really stepped it up with their healthcare infrastructure, which honestly, a lot of people are going to be like, wait, what? But it's true. There has been a lot of relocation to Costa Rica from the US and from Canada. And a lot of that's been in the medical profession. And so that has helped prop up their healthcare infrastructure, which has helped it tremendously as well too. And so you're starting to see a retirement, instead of people routing to Florida, you're starting to see them look at Costa Rica. And so, the comparison between another island area in Caribbean, like a place like Turks and Caicos, where there's might be 2,000 searches, was 22,000, I think was the number, Charles, earlier today that we looked at for Costa Rica. Did I get those right?
Yeah, absolutely. Super popular right now, but for all of those reasons you gave, especially the wellness, the blue zone, the environmental factor. It's a healthy place to be. It feels, has that overall energy and feeling to it. And I think that's kind of what the intersection of our last three episodes here, the wellness piece, the blue zone piece, and now the lifestyle piece. And that, I think Costa really represents the three of those in a great way. And I think our most successful buyers that we see are ones that really understand it's not just about an asset, it's about designing a life. Right. And wellness and the environment around you is such a cornerstone of that. So we see that, to be successful in this journey of acquiring another property outside of your own home country is that, take into account those lifestyle factors that are so important to you and weigh them appropriately when you make that decision. So that's how you avoid regret. That's how you get a great outcome. And, that's what, we're largely here to help you do.
Absolutely. And so for everyone watching, this is exactly the kind of thinking we try to bring to every search on Airdomo. Look, we're not just here about the properties that match your filters, right? We're here to give you genuine guidance on where the value is real, where the premium is earned, and where to be careful. Because that's the thing. We were founded based on everyone that wasn't careful. And I've got story after story after story, and they're not good stories. I hate those stories, but it is what founded Airdomo. And so, again, we're going to dive deeper, I think, next week into places like Costa Rica so that you can hear and experience more about wellness and newness and some great opportunities and beyond. But there's places like Portugal and Greece. And so if you go to airdomo.com, you're going to find these locations and so forth. And don't forget, we are here to have a conversation with you directly. I love speaking to people, if you can't tell. So book a complimentary Airdomo concierge call. You can go right to the website. You can click the button. You'll see my calendar, and you can absolutely do that because we're here to separate the real from the fake. Okay. So until next time, I'm excited that Charles has stayed with us, and you will be back next week, right, Charles?
You can't get rid of me now. So
I love it. He's on for good, guys. So until next time, thank you.
Bye.